I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Today we're reading from the book of Genesis, chapter 25. So let's focus on verses 29 and 30. Once, when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field exhausted. And he said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stuff because I'm exhausted." That's why he's also named Edom, which is Hebrew for reddish. Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." Genesis 25, verses 29 and 30. Now I believe that Abraham to be a man of struggles and contradictions, and he always seemed to live somewhere between faith and faithlessness. With the birth of his two grandsons, Jacob and Esau, it's as if Abraham's personal spiritual conflicts were divided between the two boys. Esau inherited Abraham's impulsive short-sightedness, but Jacob got Abraham's deceit. And later we'll see Esau displaying forgiveness and Jacob leaning on faith. At first glance, Jacob's conduct seems to be way out of line, demanding a birthright from a starving man. But on closer examination, we learn that the privileges of birthright that Jacob sought at that time were purely spiritual. In the days of the patriarchs, the head of the family acted as the family priest. And the firstborn's right by birth order, or the birthright, was to inherit that priestly role, unless the firstborn failed to accept his duty. And in that case, the birthright could be passed on to the next qualified family member. Esau's general demeanor was hardly in accord with someone who wanted to serve the Lord. And it's possible that Jacob suspected his brother didn't value the dignity and privilege of being firstborn. Therefore, when the opportunity came along, Jacob determined to put his brother to the test. And Jacob fully knew that withholding some stew wasn't going to kill Esau. However, what he found out was that Esau really disdained the priestly role. Esau was willing to unnecessarily trade his right and responsibility to lead the family spiritually. Esau was being impulsive, putting on fleshly desire, and putting them above the family's spiritual needs. Put simply, Esau was not fit to minister. Have you ever heard of a concept called the priesthood of all believers? We find this in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, and it says this, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you might proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, who once were not a people, but now are the people of God, who have not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy." You know, it is the spiritual birthright, or born again right, I guess you could say, of every believer to know God and to minister to those closest to us, and then to anyone whom we may cross paths with throughout the day. And some believers reject the idea. Just as Esau, they chose to satisfy the desires of their flesh rather than to accept the birthright or their born again right to put Jesus and others first. So what can we learn from Esau? Well, if we reject the call to minister to others, two things will happen. Number one, we'll miss the blessing of serving. And number two, someone else will take it and assume the ministry that we rejected. God doesn't need us, by the way, in order for his will to be done. But in that rejection of our God-given roles to know God and make him known to others, well, then we forfeit the blessing that accompanies obedience. So seek temporary pleasures of sin, and then you'll reap the Lord's rebuke. It's your choice. But if you seek the Lord, then you reap his blessing. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Check us out at groundworksministries.com.